your latest books.
Okay, I have a new book coming up, which looks at the incredible rise of the corporate empire of Shri Gautam Adani.
What subject?
If you say so. I think there's a story to be told. Here is a person who very few people knew about Mr. Gautam Adani.
Till a few years back.
Maybe 15, 20 years ago. But today he is not just one of India's richest men. He is the corporate conglomerate that he heads is in dominant positions in very, very important sectors of the Indian economy. For instance, the Adani Group is the single biggest generator of electricity in the private sector.
Really?
It is one of the biggest transmitters of electricity in the private sector. It is India's biggest importer of coal. It is India's biggest coal mining operator at home. It is also engaged in, it is India's biggest producer of solar energy at the same time. That's not all. It is directly, indirectly controlling the activities of 11 ports along the east coast and the west coast of India.
Including Goa, they have a stake here.
That's correct, if you say so. It is also attempting to set up, so far not very successfully, the world's largest greenfield coal mining project in Queensland in Australia.
Where they have a lot of protests.
But I haven't finished. The Mr. Adani's group is also the single biggest importer of edible oils into India, and it is a major player in imported fruits, notably apples. It is also a major player in real estate. And I understand from newspaper reports it's getting into related areas, dredging. It also has a joint venture with an Israeli defense company to produce or manufacture or assemble what are officially called unmanned aerial vehicles, simply known as drones. So there's a huge, big corporate conglomerate. Oh, and until recently I forgot to mention to you, the Adani Group was the biggest aggregator of cut and polished diamonds and gold jewelry from this country, though it is now no longer that actively involved in the business, though the relatives of the family by marriage are, including the Winsome Diamonds Group. So I feel it's important to document the incredible rise of this gentleman, not merely because of the fact that he is close to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but that I think it's an amazing story to tell, that here is a person who nobody knew 15, 20 years ago, and today who's one of India's biggest corporate captains.
Difficult job because the mainstream is not focusing on this, and there are all those strategic lawsuits, what do you call slap?
You're absolutely right. I am currently facing 2 legal cases by Adani Group companies. But at the end of the day, I am one of those naive, idealistic fools who believes that truth shall prevail. Time alone will tell. The long arm of the law is long. The wheels of justice grind slowly. The lawyers are expensive. You can be taken to different jurisdictions. But yeah, sure, at the end of the day, look, Frederick, I'm 62 years old, you know. I have to do what I have to do. I have one life to lead, okay? If I have to look my children in the eye, then I have to do what I have to do. I mean, if I have to think what happened to Gauri Lankesh, you know, okay, after all, she was gunned down in front of her own home in Bangalore. So, I mean, look, if I have to worry and constantly look behind my shoulder and think about when 2 people will gun me down in front of my home, then I won't be able to do any work. So I might as well continue the work I'm doing. Yeah.
Earlier books, in brief. There's a
December?
big pile in front of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 2 videos.
Okay. In December of 2017, I wrote this book together with Shinzani Jain, which is published by Penguin Random House, called Thin Dividing Line. The subtitle is India, Mauritius and Global Illicit Financial Flows. This book looks at how roughly 40% of the foreign money that came to India from the 90s, the early 90s till present, were all routed through this
Strange Mauritius route.
to this small clutch of islands in the Indian Ocean, whose people describe themselves as belonging to the easternmost point of Africa and the westernmost point of Asia, very strategically located. And what's interesting for me is to try and understand how this small clutch of islands acted as a conduit for money that came to India. And the book talks about the thin dividing line between legal forms of tax avoidance, which clever lawyers and accountants call good tax planning, and illegal forms of tax evasion and laundering black money into white, and money moving at high velocity across different jurisdictions so that it becomes difficult for regulatory authorities to track the flows as well as the beneficial owners of these companies. So that's often called treaty shopping. So the book attempts to document what has happened. I've also published a number of books in this period. I published...
Paranjoy, on this, I just want to ask one question. See, as an independent journalist doing the job, it's tough. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the mainstream is doing their duty on it as much as they should be doing, as much as one would expect national self-interest to dictate that they do these touch such issues?
I think the mainstream media needs to do much, much more. It's not doing enough. Much of the mainstream media is, if it's not owned by big business houses or individuals with political affiliation or political parties themselves, a very large section of the so-called mainstream media in India is bending over backwards. It's subservient to those...
Today, but even earlier?
Even earlier, but there's a difference. And let me highlight the difference. In 1977, after the emergency, when
you started your career.
That's correct. When Shri L.K. Advani was the Information and Broadcasting Minister in Morarji Desai's government, he was asked a question as to why so few journalists protested. Yes, there were some journalists who were put behind bars, but why did so many eminent editors sort of bend over backwards? Or why were they so subservient to Indira Gandhi?
And his famous statement.
Yes, when they were asked to bend, they crawled. Today, Mr. Advani is the angry old man of the BJP. That's how I would affectionately describe him. But the sad part of the story is that a very large section of our eminent journalists are crawling without being even asked to bend. Let me explain why. There are various reasons, but one of the reasons could be that together with the fact that the Great Recession has resulted in flows of advertising income and advertising revenue either stagnating or coming down, or its rate of growth decelerating, and a period which has coincided with the exponential growth of the internet, where everybody wants everything free. You know, what you read, what you listen to, what you watch. In India, there is another aspect to this development, which is a phenomenon which you see, which is a global phenomenon. And that is that large sections of the mainstream media have become relatively more dependent on financial support and advertising support from governments, central government, state government.
More dependent?
Relatively more.
Even after liberalization?
Yes. And also become more dependent on political parties, notably the ruling party.
Whichever ruling party.
For financing or for sponsorships, for advertisement. That could be a reason to explain why some of these privately owned channels are more loyal than the king. I mean, you would expect Doordarshan and All India Radio, Prasar Bharati Corporation to be subservient. In fact, it's a joke to call them autonomous and independent. I mean, I think we would be less hypocritical if they became
government departments.
Yes, if they became a wing of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. You can call them the propaganda department if you like. But be that as it may, the short point is, why is, say, Republic Television more critical of the opposition than the ruling regime? Why is Times Now often seen to be more critical of those who are critical of the government rather than the government. So I think this phenomenon can be explained by the fact that some of these channels have become relatively more dependent on government sources for funds, advertising, sponsorships, and also because these and political parties, especially in the run-up to the elections. So this could explain why we see the kind of abject subservience that we see in large sections of the media in India. So to return to the question you raised, and which is very important, I think it's more important than ever before to support independent media, foundations, trusts, philanthropic organizations that are crowd-funded, support this kind of media. Because with the net, there's been a growing reluctance on the people who read, the people who hear, and the people who watch to pay for that. So, I mean, that too, I think, needs to undergo a change, but that won't happen overnight. That's a rather long, drawn-out process. And very honestly, nobody in the world today knows exactly how you're going to monetize the content you put out on the net.
I interrupted you when you were talking about your other substantial work.
That's all right. This book, which called Sue the Messenger, this came out in May 2016. Subir Ghosh is the principal author. I am the co-author. This book documents about 15 odd cases from the mid-50s.
15, huh?
50s. No, it came out more than 15.
Cases.
More than 15 cases. In fact, in some chapters, there's more than one case. So, yeah. Say this is the mystery of the Birla book. This is for the mid-50s. This deals with Hamish MacDonald and Polyester Prince, Dhirubhai Ambani. Yeah. This is about Tamal Bandyopadhyay and Subrata Roy Sahara. This talks about the SR Group and Ruya. This talks about there are a whole lot of issues. Sucheta Dalal versus National Stock Exchange, K.R. Acharya versus the Karuturi Group. There are dozens and dozens of examples. This is the United Phosphorus Group vis-a-vis a large number of other journalists.
Are they successful? Can you fight them? Sorry about the phone call. Are they successful? Who's successful? Who wins? How do you fight them in brief?
It's not easy. It's a tough, long haul. There are some public-spirited lawyers who are assisting this process, but it's a long, drawn-out process. It should work, but it's an uphill climb. I just wanted to make one other point. You see, since this book was written, a lot more has happened. I mean, look at what has happened to The Wire, the Jay Amit Shah case. I myself have had first-hand experience about these slap suits. One notable aspect of a slap is that, even if you don't succeed in scaring the person who's written it, he could be a writer, he could be a journalist, he could be a social activist, it has a chilling effect on others.
On others?
That's right. The whole idea is to send this message.
Don't
mess around with me. We'll make your life miserable. Yeah. So this is it. I'll be happy to tell you.
Which year? Sorry.
This is May 2016. This book, which came out almost 4 years ago in April 2014, is doing reasonably well. This is the seventh print run of the book. It's been revised. Yes, and this is a book by Subir. Yes. And the Ambanis, correct.
This is basically the Gujarat story.
This is about, the Krishna Godavari gas test. This is the East Coast, the Bay of Bengal story. And one of my co-authors in gas was Subir Ghosh. He's the author of Grand Illusion, which looks at the GSPC disaster. That's the Gujarat State Petroleum Corporation. This is like a sequel to this book. And in fact, I'll be very happy if you took all these and maybe write reviews, or whoever writes it. I'll be very grateful and happy. So
there are 2 videos.
Yeah. This was partly crowdfunded. This looks at how the iron ore mining mafia in Bellary and Anantapur literally looted resources that belong to the people of this country and future generations. And to me, the way Gali Janardhan Reddy and his family members and Yediyurappa worked epitomized the convergence of not just business and politics, but crime, business and politics. And I think it's become even more relevant because Mr. Yediyurappa is the chief ministerial candidate in the forthcoming assembly elections in Karnataka. That's correct.
And
this is an older one. This was made in Dhanbad and Jharia. The theme is somewhat similar, which is looking at the way natural resources the way they are exploited. They don't really benefit local populations. They end up benefiting a privileged few. This is a phenomenon which is internationally described as the resource curse. That Mother Nature's resources, instead of being a blessing for local people, become a curse. And some of the most egregious examples can be found in Western Africa. The dictator of Liberia, Charles Taylor, he became infamous for gifting a diamond the size of a golf ball to Naomi Campbell. In Sierra Leone, we've seen civil wars on diamonds. There's a Hollywood film called Blood Diamonds, and so diamonds everywhere, including in India, have an association which is rather crime. That's right. And not to mention the recent cases of Mr. Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi. So there's always been this unsavory, ugly side to this whole business of these sparklers and this very famous slogan which says diamonds are forever. They said that this was one of the smartest slogans ever sort of coined by a marketing executive. Why? Because it ensured that you control the market. So once you buy a diamond, you've been conditioned into believing you shouldn't resell it. It's there forever after all. Sorry, this is a little digression.
Paranjoy, one question about your career path and your highs and lows of it.
Look, I am honored and I'm privileged. I've spent 40 years in the profession.
That's 77 to...
That's correct. So I am now on my own. I was on my own. There was this 15-month interlude in the economic and political... I started off in 77.
Can you just...
Okay.
Not in the print. There was no TV then.
No, you go into my website, paranjoy.in, go to my Wikipedia page, you'll find all the biographical details. My last 2 years at the University of Delhi more or less coincided with the emergency, which had an influence on my decision to be a journalist.
I see. And what's your field of study?
Economics. Yeah. We didn't have journalism courses those days. So I worked for about 9 years in Kolkata with various organizations, including Business India, Business World, The Telegraph when it was launched. Yes.
Akbar's original team.
Absolutely. 1982, July 1982.
He was a great editor then. Inspiring, no?
He is Minister of State for External Affairs now. Yes, you are entitled to your opinion and I will not disagree with you on this particular point.
About him being a good editor then?
Yes.
People felt
he was not just a good editor, he was an amazing editor. I mean, when you look at individual contributions to Indian journalism, you can think of people like Khushwant Singh, Kuldeep Nair, Vinod Mehta. Yes, and once upon a time I would put Mubashir Javed Akbar in that category. But that is in the past. Today he's of course a politician. He was with the Congress, now he's with the BJP. Now he's the Honorable Union Minister of State for External Affairs. But you were asking me about my career path. So I moved to Delhi in 1986. I've been stationed in the worst part of the whole of India, the most polluted part of India. Barring that 15-month... in Delhi, I worked for India Today. I worked with the Pioneer.
When Pioneer was a good paper under Vinod Mehta.
When it was launched, its Delhi edition was launched.
Under Vinod?
That's correct. And for about 6 years, I was a full-time idiot on the Idiot Box with CNBC Television 18. I also did some part-time work for Lok Sabha Television, and I headed an educational institution for about 6 years called the School of Convergence. You'll get all these details from my personal website and from my Wikipedia page. But for 10 years, I was on my own, barring this 15-month interlude EPW. Now what happened is I was on my own, and I spent about a third of my time teaching, training, consulting, I am associated at present with Greenpeace India, with Common Cause, all in a advisory capacity with a professional body called the Foundation for Media Professionals. I'm also on the executive committee of the Media Foundation, which 79 and heads the Hoot. But the remaining part of my time, I continue to do what I had been doing, except that I work across the media. I'm trying to work in the 3 languages I know, Bangla, Hindi and English. I spend, of the remaining 2/3 of my time, I spend a third writing, digging up some dirt and muck for websites. I used to appear quite frequently on radio. They haven't called me of late. Television, yes, not as an anchor, but more as a guest, as an analyst. And I'm spending quite a bit of time doing work which has a longer shelf life, which is less ephemeral.
As we grow older, that becomes a priority with us.
I've been publishing books. I've published 25 books in the last 4 years.
Last 4 years, 25 books.
That's correct. And I've been producing
You've been publishing?
That's right. I'm a publisher.
Yeah, other people's?
Yeah. No, other people's work and my own work.
Okay, under Authors Upfront?
That's correct.
Okay.
I work with them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They're my publishing associates.
I see.
So I've been working with them now for quite a bit of time. And I intend doing this. I've produced and directed about more than 15 films in the last 15 years, so I continue to do some work. In the coming years, I'm trying to crowdfund and seek the support of civil society organizations for some of my work. I'm trying to work in areas, I'm trying to help others who are working on public health issues, on issues like the agrarian crisis in India, on countering fake news, on helping those who are trying to strengthen the Right to Information Act, those who are working to help whistleblowers. I'm working with a young Goan person who's trying to look at the intersection of skin color, caste and class in contemporary India. A documentary film is currently under production. A website will happen. I have some of my own work to do.
What would be the priorities for the media if we could, if we had another lifetime ahead of us?
Look, hold truth to power. Don't be daunted. Don't cow down.
In terms of organizational structures, what does the media need now?
Independence and autonomy.
How?
Independence from politics, independence from business. How? By having your loyal readers not only becoming your subscribers but supporting you, so that you become truly autonomous in every respect. Autonomous to and independent to report, independent financially. Look, the road ahead or the tasks ahead, the roads ahead are difficult. But I do see this is the way forward. You know, if you recall today in the morning we talked about the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. We talked about issues like crowdfunding. We looked at trusts funding these kinds of initiatives. I think that's the way forward, because I don't think anybody, not the Washington Post, not New York Times, not the Guardian, nobody's been able to crack this whole business of how do you monetize the content that you put up on the net. How do you get those who read and appreciate what you write, what you put out for people to hear and to view, to pay for it. These are huge challenges. I don't think any of us has the answers. But we are always like struggling to find that answer.
Paranjoy, last question. Who are your role models as
Oh my
journalists?
God, that's a tough question.
As
No,
journalist.
there are too many of them.
I.F. Stone.
Oh, there are loads of them. You know, in India, I mean, somebody like Sainath is doing great work.
Vinod Mehta.
Vinod Mehta. Oh, he was an amazing person. He's no more with us. The old avatar of M.J. Akbar. To see somebody like Josie Joseph, who's doing some excellent work. What people like Siddharth Vadarajan and Venu and Siddharth Bhatia are doing in Wire. What Scroll is doing, what Caravan is doing. I mean, what Anandnath, Hartosh Bal, Vinod Jose is the editor, what they're doing. I mean, I think they're doing great work. I mean, there are quite a few. Yes, that's right. What somebody like Prabir Purokasta is doing in NewsClick. And here I'm only telling you about the English guys. There are dozens of small players in working in different languages who do not have the kind of profile.
But with so much technology and options, have the alternative world explored the media sufficiently? I'm saying you mentioned a lot of names and they've done amazing work, but have enough people for a country the size of India?
No, there's much more to be done. Much more to be done. And much more needs to be done at a grassroots level, at a local level. People who work in different languages, in different Indian languages, and who can, who are not armchair critics like somebody like me. So somebody who's
everyone has their role, but
ensconced in the comfort of the national capital. I mean, people who sort of literally hit the road and
that is a fulcrum role. It's a key role, but you need all kinds.
We need a lot more of grassroots reportage. I mean, there are a lot of people.
You may not be aware. You may not be aware that how you inspire others. No, like we keep following you, so we may not.
So it's okay. I mean, say even what people like Stalin and Jessica Mebere are doing here, video volunteers. People like what Subhrangshu is doing, like CG Netswara. They're trying to push those boundaries. Legal life. A whole lot.
Because their work seems to be having some alternatives on the economic sense, also on the financial sense. I mean, everyone need not follow the corporate model of big capital accumulation.
Correct. So there are these alternatives emerging. There needs to be many more such players, there to be many more such individuals, and I'm sure that I'm hopeful that
India is innovative enough for
that the future is not sort of uniformly bleak and pessimistic. I think
people need faith. They need faith in themselves. They need faith in
To repeat my closing line in today's lecture, the darkest hour is just before the dawn.
Sometimes things go further lower, but it's not just that. It's also
Kali Yuga is here and now.
No, but it's also that sometimes blessings come from unexpected quarters. Something you're not expecting at all happens.
Correct.
Like the internet opened up. While people are skeptical of it, scared of it, I see potential in some ways.
I must tell you from my own example. I can tell you. When I went on a crowdfunding initiative, I was overwhelmed with the response I got. I raised close to 14 lakh rupees after paying various people, including those who did the promotion on the social media, from somewhere around 480 odd people. What was gratifying to me was that about 150 of these people are complete strangers. I don't know where they are from, who they are, how they look. So that is what particularly gratifying. And even small donations with large donations have truly given me a lot of hope.
Thank you so much and all the best. Thanks for sparing your time.
Thanks very much.